The biggest year-end sale ever. 700 hot tubs in stock, priced for immediate liquidation. All hot tubs must go. 5-person hot tubs, $2,500. Swim spa starting at $10,000. 100% financing. Aqua Living's end-of-year sale. Go to shophottubs.com.
So as much fun as Coolidge Park and the carousel can be for kids and adults of all ages, once you are there, you owe it to yourself to have a short walk up to the Walnut Street Bridge, where we are this morning talking with Hamilton County historian Linda Mines. Good to see you.
Good morning.
You're just kind of all over our airwaves this morning, or this week, because we've had our chance to talk with you about Christmases in the past. Now here we are talking once again about history.
Oh, it's all that connection between the past, the present, and the future.
And the Walnut Street Bridge really does personify that, because in the present, typically, you see runners and kids on their new bicycles they've gotten for Christmas. The community comes and enjoys it here.
They do.
But it is a central location for our history here. You're going to educate us a little.
Well, and I love coming here because I think it's true. Anywhere you look at civilization, it arises from the river. So if I'm going to look at Chattanooga history, Chattanooga parks, I want to stroll the banks of the river. I want to be up here on the Walnut Street Bridge, built in the 1890s, preserved for the future generations, but I can stand here and I can look to the east and I can see Orchard Knob and remember the Williams family deciding, as one of the original 5 families that settled in this area, that they were going to plant orchards. They were going to plant trees, and that became known as the Orchard Knob of their land. And yet today we know it for a Civil War military historical site. All of the Renaissance that's going on around it. I can look and see the Hunter overlooking the river and think about this city is the center of the American history movement, and all of that's preserved at the Hunter.
I did not know that story about Orchard Knob. Do you know if there are any of the original trees remaining? Do you know?
That I do not know, but I know there are descendants of the Williamses still here in the local community. And you think about, you know, the lovely thing about pioneers and explorers is planning ahead for future generations, and that idea that fruit would always be necessary. And one of the things that you had to deal with on the frontier was dealing with vitamins and nutrients, and having an orchard along with everything else you were going to be growing was incredible.
You talk about preserving for the future. I know the story quite well. Hopefully most people do, but there was a time where the Walnut Street Bridge was in danger.
It was.
I mean, about to lose it. Can you imagine our city now without it?
And we were just talking about, it's become such a center foundational point for people who want to get out, who want to look at the river, who want to stand here and gaze at the 4 bridges that define this city. And had it not been for Garnet Chapin and the public works, the arts community here locally, you know, the mayor and others coming together and really making the investment to preserve this, it wouldn't exist.
We are talking about ways to get out in the winter months and enjoy Chattanooga. Once you're a little bit midway down the bridge and you look to your, well, our right, if we were to stroll down it, is McClellan Island. You can now go paddle boarding on the river.
You can.
If you got a kayak or a canoe, you can head out there. It's a beautiful spot.
It is, and there's such history there, and the bird sanctuary, and I mean, we think about the fact that really the first recorded sighting that we have of Chattanooga occurs in 1779, and it's John Donaldson and his flatboat party, and they describe McClellan Island.
Really?
As they are flatboating down the river.
Those writings of his,
yes.
Where are they?
You can go online and actually access John Donaldson River Diaries, and he recorded from the time that they left the Watauga settlement until they finally landed at the site of Fort Nashboro.
There's been a lot of history from then until now.
There has been.
Our embracing and acknowledging of history continues. So last year, we as a city remembered and then made a memorial to Ed Johnson.
Yes. You know, one of the things that I think tells you something about a city is when they have the ability to embrace the light and the dark in their past and to use that to teach. And the Ed Johnson story is a profound story. We know that Ed Johnson, now we know, most people people knew even then that Ed Johnson was wrongly accused, and ultimately the court case goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court with a stay of order that he be protected, but the mob attacked the jail here, brought him out onto this bridge, and hanged him. And I mean, just a horrific miscarriage of justice.
But it was a horrific miscarriage of justice, and yet you talk about Chattanooga and its place in history, the country's history. Once again, that was not just our local history, it became national history because of the way it was then argued.
Very first U.S. Supreme Court case that dealt with a criminal issue. And there's something very healing about being able to walk out onto the bridge now and to glance over and to see Ed Johnson turn away from the noose and the mob, indicating how wrong his death was, and yet he died saying, "I am an innocent man."
And something I will tell you, if you don't mind me pointing it out.
I love it.
I was walking, I love it too. I was walking before we came over here to, on my own, take a look at that memorial, and his last words were, and they preserved them in the way he said them, "I am a innocent man." That is not a typo. That's the beauty of his words being preserved.
You know, I've often thought about it, and one of the things that I try to say to students when we talk about Ed Johnson, can you imagine the terror of knowing you're innocent and yet you're about to die, and forgiving everyone around you? I mean, that's...
I think we've heard that story before.
I was about to say, I think
we've
seen that story, and I don't know that I'm that good of a person, but Ed Johnson, as horrible as the story is, Ed Johnson's such a wonderful reminder to all of us that there is that spark of divinity.
You know, I think the thing too about becoming a student of history, and perhaps you already are one, but I'll go again with the nature of getting out this time of year. A highlight for me once was taking my older daughter on our own walking tour, when she was in about the 5th grade. So we would go at our own pace, but you stop and you read things that you don't when you're passing by in a car or running after the kids on the bicycle. The history markers that are along the bridge and other places, you just learn, and there's a spark that comes, and then you can go home and learn more on your own.
Oh, you can. And we can stand right here on the bridge and can look at the Ed Johnson story and say that's such a moment of darkness, but we can also look toward the North Shore, and in 1863, once the Union occupied it, this river became the gateway to freedom, and if you could get across the river to the North Shore, you were no longer an enslaved person in the South.
Is that where Renaissance Park is?
Renaissance Park is, and it was Camp Contraband. You were not yet a citizen, but you were no longer enslaved. You became property of the U.S. Army, and one of the quickest ways into citizenship was then, if you were a man of color, to join the U.S. colored troops and become an active fighter for the Union cause, and hundreds of men of color did that right here in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
There is so much more than just the beauty of the bridge. It's totally wound, as the river is, throughout our history. Linda, thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. There are stories to be told and footsteps to walk in.
Love it. We're back with more of our ways to enjoy Chattanooga. When we come back, we're going to take you down to the public library, tell you about some things going on there that you'll want to enjoy.
Your Honor, the defendant is groping her attorney.
That's my court, baby.
Big Bang's Melissa Rout.
Anyone that's a stripper, please go home.
John Larroquette.